second video for the skull. We are adding details to it. I've already talked about the division of the lines. So now we are going to roll out a coil, which I have already done here. And we are going to work on forming the eye socket and the bones around the eye socket. So I have a coil here. I'm going to want to make sure the coil goes around about the center of my skull. I don't want to go all the way to the top because I have my forehead and I don't want it to go too far up. So I'm going to probably bring it down a little bit. And my coil overlaps, so I'm going to just cut it a little bit so I'm getting a nice finish on it. So once I do that, I'm going to bring the tips of the coils up into that point, and that's going to help me shape my nasal bone a little bit more. So it kind of looks like goggles. He kind of looks like a scuba diver. Scuba, scuba, scuba. All right. I'm going to pinch those two pieces together. That's going to help with my nasal bone. But then I'm going to remove this because I want to score and slip, right? Got to score and slip your attachments, especially if you've come back to it from a different day. It's going to be hard. You need to score and attach your pieces. All right. Gonna add just a teeny bit of water there. It's gonna act as my glue, my slip. And if you overscore, it's okay. You can always blend it back. No harm done there. All right. So now I'm gonna blend in my goggles, making sure it looks a part of the original form. We are also working on making sure our skull is symmetrical. We want to make sure both sides are even. That is why we divided it into the planes that we did, so we could get a nice even skull. Oh no. All right. So we've built up around the eyes a little bit. I need to weld on the inside as well as the outside. You can either do that with your finger or with a tool. I also like to take a wet paintbrush, and if it's kind of hard for me to get in some nooks and crannies, I like to use the paintbrush to kind of help smooth it out as well. So that's an option for you guys. Okay. And then you can keep forming it. If you're like, man, it needs to be a little bit wider, you can press the clay. You can kind of push the clay a little bit. You can also look at your skull and you're like, okay, let's form it. All right. So I have my eyes built up. Yours will be better. You'll spend a little bit more time on it. But now we're going to move on to building up the cheekbones on the side. So a lot of students usually do this like glasses. If I put it too far up, if I put it in the middle, that's not where our cheekbones are. Our cheekbones are actually at the lower part. So you need to make sure you're placing it on the lower part of the rim that we just made for our eye socket. So placing it lower, and I'm only going to need about half of this coil, which is great. I'm going to use the other half on this side. You can also make sure that your coils are the same size. They're pretty good. Might roll it out just a teeny bit, teeny bit. All right, and that's gonna go there, and then that one is gonna go on the side. So then I'm building up the cheekbones. I can always add more later too if it doesn't look right. So scoring on the sides of my cheekbones. And then once again, I would start to blend that as well. I'm going to just press in a little bit. Now by adding the cheekbones, it helps because I need that little pocket right there. When I carve into the skull, I have little pockets up here. Okay, so I already have that pocket, that definition. So when I go to carve, I can make that just a little bit more as well as I'm working with it. Remember, we don't carve until the leather hard stage, so do not start carving until you get all your add-ons and all your pieces on. And then we also need to blend this into the eye bridge, the cheek. All right. Now, I feel like I could build up the cheeks just a little bit more. There's a little bit more in front. So I'm just going to take a little bit more clay. I'm going to take 2 little balls. I'm just going to place them under here. And then I'm going to start to blend. The hardest part is adding the details, making sure it's accurate, making sure you're taking your time to use a reference, to use your sketches, to use the skull, to look up pictures. All right. Forming the brow just a little bit more. Bringing that down too a little bit. I do feel like I made the brow just a little bit too much, so I'm going to just blend it in a little bit more with the skull. You can always push it out too. Okay. So I have my eyes, I have my cheeks built up. Now I'm going to start building up the front of the mouth because it's pretty flat, so I'm going to build up the front of the mouth. How I'm going to do that, I'm just going to take a piece of clay. Just a small piece, nothing too big, nothing too crazy. I'm going to score the front. And my chin's looking actually kind of big, but that's okay. And then I want to kind of form it maybe into like a disc or like a little bit. It's okay if it's a little bit more organic. It doesn't have to be anything too perfect. But we're just going to build up that front of the face because our teeth do stick out a little bit. But it doesn't stick out too much to where it's like a monkey mouth, you know? The monkey jaws come out pretty. Okay. So I'm just going to build this up a little bit. So it just has a little bit more. I can also begin to shape my jaw a little bit more if I want. I can push that back a little bit to get a nice jawline. And if you feel like your jaw is too long, you can always trim it and carve it. Take some of it away. All right. So that's what I got so far. Okay, little side, front. Okay, got nasal bone, got the eyes, got the front of mouth. All right. So we're not quite done yet. Our forehead does come forward just a little bit, so I'm gonna just add a teeny bit of clay at the top of my forehead. So same thing that I did with the mouth. Just gonna add a teeny bit. Just going to give it a little bit more definition. And mine's really messy right now. You guys are going to take your time. This is going to take about 3 or 4 days to make. Like I said, the hardest part is the details. Making sure the details come out accurately. Okay. All right, so built up the forehead a little bit so it's less going back, a little bit more lifted. And then I can really start to blend in these features to make sure they look good and not too cartoony. All right. I'm gonna start kind of crafting the nasal bone just a little bit more. It does come in a little bit and the cheeks do drop down just a smidge more. My clay is pretty fresh, so I can keep moving it and molding it. Be mindful, the more you handle it, the more your clay is gonna dry out. And also, if you're leaving your clay out like this, also be mindful that it can dry out. You'll have to grab new clay. If you have pieces that are sitting out, okay, you need to make sure that you're taking care of your pieces as well. Okay. And then I'm also going to build up this bridge a little bit. If you look at the skull, the bridge is built up here, just slightly in between. So we're going to get less of a goggle effect now. A little bit more bone structure. And you can push some of that clay away. We're back. All right. Okay. So pushing the clay just in the eye sockets a little bit. You got to be careful with the eye sockets. Yes, you want to push them in to create more dimension, but you don't want to push so much that you pop that bubble, you pop that hollow form. So pushing the clay just a little bit, kind of pulling it. All right. Doesn't look too shabby. I can build up the cheekbones more, but I'll do that later. Now, when it comes to teeth, everyone's like, Miss Surgeon, the teeth are so hard, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Okay, I'm just marking where the nose is right now. And I'm just gonna build up the front of my jaw a little bit more because I'm not happy with it. So that's a lot of clay to put over the front, but I'm not gonna use it all. Okay. So you do have a little nasal bone up here. Okay, you'll have a hole that you'll slightly carve into. That's okay. I'm gonna push my clay up here. He looks like he has a mustache now. He's like, mustache. Okay. And then I'm just going to blend this in just a teeny tiny bit. So the best way I've found to do teeth is to use the back of, not necessarily this one, probably a needle tool, or even your rake tool, your scoring tool. And you're like, what? How can you use that? And I'll tell you. You can use the back of it, and I like to impress the teeth because it's the easiest way for me to get teeth looking nice without too much crafting and effort. And you can practice this in a piece of clay. So I'm going to let that get hard for a little bit. So if I have a piece of clay, it's flat, and I press down, I don't want to press too far, but I can press into it and I can drag it down slightly to get a slight tooth effect. And if I keep doing that, it makes some pretty decent teeth. I know it's hard to see. Okay, so I usually use the back of my tool, drag down, and then I shape it a little bit at the bottom to give me a tooth. Yes, you do have to do teeth. You can't be a toothless skeleton. Now, if you choose to not do the bottom jaw, you still need to do teeth. So I'm going to mark my axis line again. And then I want to start in the middle and go outwards. Don't start on the outside and go inwards, because then you're going to get like a tooth in the middle of your mouth and it's going to look weird. So I'm going to press, shift down just a little bit, press, shift down. And I'm going to keep doing that. Now my teeth, he needs braces, he looks like, because they're a little spaced out. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you have the same number of teeth on both sides. Remember, it should be symmetrical. And then you can actually take a tool and you can flatten some of those teeth out to where it looks less rounded. And you can always go back and reshape too. And start to pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up. All right. Okay, that is the best way, like I have said, to do teeth. Yes, you can craft teeth. Yes, you can go in and carve with a loop tool, but it's probably going to take you forever. I like this method because you can do this and then you can also refine them as well as you're making them. And then if you were to do the bottom, it would be the same thing. Press and lift, press and lift, press and lift, press and lift. All right. All right, so that's what I have so far. Once this dries and gets leather hard, you can begin to carve and re-sculpt and refine this to your liking. I can't carve right now because it's still pretty plastic. It's still leather hard. But you'll need to carve out the eyes a little bit. You'll need to carve out the nose a little bit because that's a little bit of a hole. Remember, we're not carving all the way through. Do not carve all the way through. Okay, your beads will fall out. And then from that step, you guys can add any of your decorations, your horns, all that. Last thing. So we forgot to put our beads in. If you forget to put your beads in, because we were supposed to do that when we attached the rims, you're going to have to do some brain surgery. You guys are like, yes. So I'm making a little cut on the inside, and I'm going to drop my beads in there. I'm not going to drop them all in there, but about 10, like I said before. Go in there. And then I'm going to seal them back up, pretend like nothing happened, pretend I did it right the first time, make it look seamless. Don't do the brain surgery on top, do it underneath so no one can see it, you know. All right. Okay, so that has beads in there now. I can somewhat hear it. It's very faint. When it fires, it will be louder. So, pretend my skull is all done. All done. I carved it. It looks real. I have my add-ons, whatever those might be, whether it's my horns, my flowers, a hat. Okay. I need to make sure my final step is I need to poke a hole in the bottom. I like to use a needle tool. I do a little bit of a swirl. Okay, to open it up. To open it up. Okay, and then that releases the air. That ensures it won't explode. You have to poke a hole in your skull. Even when you turn it in, even if you don't want it fired, I'm looking for you to poke a hole. It's part of the project. Okay, and then like normal, you would put your initials on it. Gonna do mine, HS. Put your period number on it. Period 5 for today. You take a picture of it. You put your rubric. You put it on my desk, and then I grade it for you. Okay? And then that is your school project.